Hey there, Cheshi here for a special episode of Let's Talk About Conventions. Now, this is not a prepared speech, this isn't written. This is kind of a series of thought out but off the cuff remarks about the recent discussion of Anthrocon. So for those who saw the title and didn't understand it, or those who don't know at all, recently Anthrocon put through some new rules about their fursuit parade. Specifically, there's a cap, but more specifically, there is minimum standards for fursuiting for the parade now for the first time. So it used to be everyone showed up, everyone got to walk, but now there's a cap. And there's been a lot of discussion and debate about this topic because going from 0 to full suit only, no poodling type rules, handlers only at the beginning, not during the parade, was definitely a shift. So I want to talk about this. As a side note, most of this footage is from various Vernal Equinox fur walks, and is B-roll. It should not be taken as any commentary on the discussion happening. I just needed something to show besides me yapping away. Also, I swear just out of frame, I'm poodling in solidarity. The viewer can decide for themselves how much I'm showing or not showing. Oh, and if you don't know the term, poodling refers to wearing fursuit parts with exposed skin, because I guess it kinda looks like a poodle. Partialing means you only have partial fursuit parts, but everything is covered, and a full suit is a full-body fursuit, or what one would call a fairly integrated outfit. That line kinda gets blurry depending on the outfit. Anyway, definition's done. I assume if you're here, it's for the controversy anyway, and you know what these terms mean. Every furry out there has already piled on for this discussion, and I'm late to the party. But for me, this is my convention staff herself, weighing in on what makes sense and what doesn't. Now, as a bit of background, I have no affiliation with Anthrocon. I have not been to Anthrocon in recent memory. It's been a long time ago, but it's been a while. I have no connection to the staff, Uncle Kage, or anyone else. This is me as an outsider not knowing what they know about the situation. But on the other hand, I have staffed large events at cons that experienced similar explosive growth in terms of raw numbers of people. I've been there when the con went from 4 to 8 to 16 to 25,000 people, and their main events had the same change because of that massive rapid growth. That moment where you have to add a cap. In the case of an event I was staffing, and in some cases running, not only did we have to cap, we had to set the cap at 60 to 70% of the previous years, because the mass of people arrived, completely obliterated our attendee count, and we had to go, whoa, this is not doable. We have to significantly shrink the number of people entering. Not only did we cap, but we had to reduce. So there's controversy here because the rules are pretty lengthy, and it's relatively soon before the con, and there's a cap, and there's handler restrictions, and there are costume restrictions or fursuit restrictions. That's supposed to be full suit only, no poodling or no exposed skin, in other words. Partials must be 100% covered, and then following the rest of the usual non-after dark rules of the convention. Now, a couple of things to bring out first is they do make accommodations for those with disabilities, which is good. But the no handlers for everyone else outside of putting on the costume at the beginning is definitely a change, as is the costume restrictions. So let's start off with what I think is uncontroversial, the cap. So let's start off with what I consider the golden rule of convention rules. Any change has to have a cause. When you add a rule, you have to have a reason. Turning this rule into more practical terms, if you're running an event, don't create rules for things that haven't happened yet. They don't have to have happened at your event, but they have to have at least happened at some point in time. Events already have the basic health and safety rules down, and every rule you nail to that frame weighs down the entire process. Add your rules wisely. So yes, the cap is in place because Anthrocon can't handle the attendance beyond a certain point, and the current attendance, plus the rapid growth of furry cons, shows they needed one, both for the convention and for the fur walk. But the poodle ban? I see that as solving a problem they haven't actually had yet. unless the overall quote-unquote quality of the parade was the problem, and not worries over fursuiters being turfed out. And I don't think anyone is up in arms about the cap existing. I think that seems to be a relatively okay received thing. The cap happens. It happens at lots of other events. You can't have every person enter a contest, but that happens. The question now is who gets in under the cap. And this is where that rule I said before of rules needing reasons kind of needs to be pulled apart a bit. I started looking at the footage of last year's fursuit parade, and it kind of feels like this whole requiring full suits and no poodling seems like a rule for something that hasn't happened yet. Maybe I'm wrong with that. I don't know what problem they're exactly trying to solve, and the write-up doesn't really give me any clues there. If there really was some glaring quality issue at the parade, we don't know what happened there. We don't know if the city said, sorry, last year's parade was just not up to snuff. I don't know. Maybe they're trying to play to the crowd, that the whole, the downtown Pittsburgh gets involved in it. I don't know. That's the part that kind of makes me scratch my head a little bit. The costume standards, it seems to me, and this is where I think they may have fumbled this a bit, is making rules for a problem that doesn't exist. And I get it, that might be something they've seen. I actually tried looking around for this. I went online, I tried to look up other large convention furry parades that had a raw footage, from this year, from a couple months ago, and say, is there a big problem? Are there suddenly a whole bunch of people in $30 Temu masks and shorts and t-shirts and that's it? Walking in en masse, is that a problem? And nothing stuck out to me. So it begs the question of what exactly are they trying to prevent here? Now, I could flip this around and say, well, they want to make sure that the full suitors get their chance and not get pushed aside by partialing or, mask and hoodie or mask, shorts and t-shirt, but that really wasn't stated as an intent here. So it's not clear. I could see that being the unstated intent here, but I'll get to why I think these rules don't really help there. They aren't really needed. So if there's a problem that was brought on by this, I don't see what it is. So we have the full suits, we have no handlers outside of suiting up and suiting down. I don't know specifically the length of the parade walk and whether or not that is considered a problem, but obviously people considering it an accessibility issue, or people who want assistance or, someone to help them, because there's an outdoor portion and the July heat of Pittsburgh, from my memories, is unforgiving. So I don't know what problem they're trying to solve here exactly. Are the handlers sullying the image of the parade? Do they want a pure waterfall of nothing but fun fur and appropriately covering costumes to go with it? I looked at some of the old parade footage and I did see things where you saw sort of a lot of handlers in some cases, a lot of, minders going with people. And maybe you could say that, oh no, the purity of the event, but I think it's pretty understood that they're handlers. They're walking alongside the person, they're walking near the person. The suitor is clearly the center of attention. If they really want to do something, I don't know, they could have the handlers walk alongside away from the central path and only sort of intervene if necessary, but who knows? So we have the costume standards of full suits only. Again, just no poodling, no exposed skin, but it's hot out there. And for some people that's not going to be comfortable, and I get it. Here's the thing, if they were really doing this just to sort of make sure first, the full suitors have priority, or the full suitors have their moment in the sun, literally, there's better ways they could have done this. From my experience, and this is with an event, again, that I talked about before, the event that I ran before or staffed before, where the next year had to have 60% of the original attendance in it, in terms of participants, we learned a very important fact. Caps tend to be self-selecting for seriousness. Once you put in the cap, you rarely need it, as long as there's some friction to sign up. As long as there's some lineup you have to wait in to get your badge or your approval, generally speaking, it goes well. The people who are serious about entering show up first. So in my case, it was a costuming contest, i.e. a masquerade. And we said, okay, well, Thursday night we've got X number of slots. Friday, we've got X number of slots. And Saturday, we've got X number of slots for the Saturday night contest. And we'll give out those, and then it's first come, first serve for those spots. And if you don't get in, you don't get in. We might have a standby line, but, we can't guarantee your spot anymore. And we also had a rule then for a costume contest, because people were entering bought costumes. This was a costume contest, so it's a little different than Fursuit Parade. We said, well, bought costumes are out of competition, and again, you will only be given a spot if we have slots at the end. Because that was genuinely a problem we had the year before. A lot of people showed up and bought costumes, and this was ultimately a costume contest, like a costume crafting contest. They weren't eligible to win an award anyway, but they went on stage, and we were terrified that they were going to fill up the masquerade and leave all the people who made their costumes in the dust. Kind of what the fear is here, maybe, that, partials or masks only are going to leave the full suitors outside of the competition. But the cap, plus the need of that lineup of that first come, first served, meant the people who were serious about entering all lined up. What happened each day was we had people camped out, like people lining up an hour, 2 hours before the desk opened, their entry form in their hands, ready to register. And on no day did we ever run out of spots before that lineup ran out. And in fact, I don't think we hit the cap after that. We got close, and I think we quietly let 1 or 2 people in. And we should mention there was no cap for kids. Children's entries, no cap. Just a side note. Once we put the cap in and threatened the cap, all the entries that were not focused on going to it didn't show up. They didn't enter. We only had a handful of no-shows, unlike the previous year where we had a lot of no-shows. And that little bit of friction plus a limit meant it kind of self-selected. So an attendee cap was kind of self-correcting. So for instance, if I were Anthrocon and I was really determined to make this a fursuit priority parade, I would say, okay, full suits get in, and then if we have cap space after each given, allotment of tickets or entries, we will allow in partials. Doesn't matter if partials, doesn't matter if poodles, doesn't care. But the first come, first serve go to the full suits. And the idea here would be that is a self-selecting thing for the serious people, and the people who are serious but not in full suit will probably get a spot too. So that's one possible way they could have handled this. Another way suggested was lottery. And they let everyone enter, and then they pick from a lottery. It makes sense. Now, logistically, that can be a pain. If it's online, it gets even worse. So it almost has to be an in-person lottery, which means logistically, you're going to have people lining up for the lottery tickets instead. And the reason why I say that is someone could easily find a way to enter 5 times, and, once one of them hits, their other 4 entries get thrown away, and that's all they get. And yeah, there's ways you could probably get around that with phone numbers or whatever, but overall, lotteries almost becomes a lineup situation anyway, because the people willing to wait in line will get a ticket. Maybe the simplest way would be first come, first serve. Whoever shows up gets in. Generally speaking, the people who are most determined to enter will probably have something they want to show off, so they're the ones who are going to line up. And it'll get the non-serious people who, again, this is a straw man argument. I have no idea why people enter a fursuit parade. The ones who are like, well, I've got nothing better to do at 2 o'clock, but I'll happily be cheered at by a crowd. Those folks don't show up. So first come, first serve is one option. The second one's the lottery. And the lottery has drawbacks because, if it's online, again, there's no friction to enter, so everyone just enters again. You might get people entering for the lulz, frankly, because, well, why not? And the third one is a first come, first serve with preference. So if the determination here or the problem we're trying to solve is the full suitors are getting, deprioritized, you do the first come, first serve with full suits getting front of the line access. I can see the benefit to all of them. I could see the benefit to a blend of them. Some lottery plus some first come, first serve, or some lottery plus some juried. Those are all options, right? The absolutist part of you must be this furry to enter the ride was a bit of a surprise, and it was very much seems like it's trying to solve a problem they haven't had yet. I would almost suggest that they go with the simple ones, like the lottery or first come, first serve, and then see how the parade turns out. But for me, the big thing is, and this is where I think they would be better off trying to clarify what they were trying to solve by having that rule. If it was truly just about the crowd optics of like the outsiders seeing, wow, this doesn't seem very furry at all. It's just a bunch of people with ears on. I don't get it. Like, I don't think we should care. And I think that the convention goers are probably going to be the final arbiter of what's cool or what's not in the parade. And it's all about welcoming and inclusivity here. And it's strange that we want to make it almost a financially aspirational destination where you have to have enough money to have a full suit before you're allowed to walk in the parade. And then you get sort of dodgy questions like, what if someone shows up in a really bad scam suit? What if someone shows up in a cheap Spirit Halloween costume that technically covers the full body? You know, what if I show up in my blow-up fox costume? Is that okay? And I know there's the whole, they are the final arbiter, so I guess it won't be okay. But then it becomes where they draw the line. It's putting the staff of the event in a very awkward situation where I suspect there will be some feelings hurt unless they basically have a very, very low bar for entry. With all that in mind, I want to conclude on a more philosophical note about all this. I asked it before in passing, but who or what is the Fursuit Parade for exactly? Is it for the people walking? Is it for the audience? And where does that fit in conventions as they get bigger? I wanted to give this same analogy. I talked before about staffing anime cons and the masquerade, or cosplay contest. And for those of you who weren't around earlier on, something to understand is that during the masquerade, the rest of the convention basically shut down. Maybe there was a token panel, like one con I went to literally had the I don't like the masquerade panel. Everyone else either went to dinner or they went to see the masquerade. It fit the entire con. And going back to my earlier example where we had to cap, this was becoming an impossibility. We were literally seeing people lining up at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon for a show that was supposed to start at 7, but was really going to start at 9. Hundreds of people sitting there lining up. And the contestants, that number was growing as well. And eventually there has to be a reckoning. Not the end of the event, but the concept that this event encompasses the entire convention. To continue this, back in the day, cosplay was a very, very tiny thing at cons. You might find that funny to hear now, but cosplays were the very, very random weirdo. It was only people who made their own costumes because you couldn't really buy anything. And the masquerade was a chance for them to showcase it on stage to everybody else. So you got to see it. And it was those cool costumes, and it was a chance for costumes that weren't necessarily easily wearable, and it was a showcase. I would argue the earlier fur walks kind of did the same thing. Sure, there were people in suits, but they didn't seem to be wearable as long, and in general, it was sort of a thing where you might see them, you might not, but the parade meant that everybody who had a suit could pick that one time and strut across for everyone else to see. I don't think we're really missing that chance now. Just saying. Like, fursuiting is a significant percentage of the convention now. I know it's still, it's not high, but it's into double digits now. The stats are like 1 in 4 furries own some portion of a fursuit, and full suits are becoming more common. I kind of look at it like this. It almost becomes the antithesis of seeing people. Like, I tried to go to the Vernal Equinox fur walk, and all I could think was, wait, so we suit up and immediately leave the convention? Like, why? And I get it, there's some aspect of, being out in a giant group of people that is sort of inspiring, but we already are a giant group of people. So I would argue there is almost a philosophical question of, where does the fursuit parade fit when you're already rubbing shoulders with the same furries all day in their suits? So this isn't me trying to bury it as good riddance to it, it's sad. It's congratulations, guys. You don't need the parade anymore at most conventions. Like, I would rather take that time to showcase furries another way, but just look at all of us in fursuits. Well, we have furry conventions for that. It's a lot of work and planning, and effectively kind of shutting down a lot of the con for little gain anymore, in my opinion. Again, this is all just my opinion. So I'm not really a big proponent of the fursuit parade, or at least I'm not the big proponent of how many hundreds or thousands of people can we get in the parade. To me, it just doesn't seem like a great use of the time. Again, myself, going to and staffing anime conventions and sci-fi conventions back in the day, that was sort of that tipping point of saying, well, we're not going to shut down the rest of the con for this event. It's going to be an event, but it's going to be an event alongside a bunch of other events that people want to do. And I kind of feel like the weight of tradition makes the fursuit parade bigger and bigger, like it's some obligatory thing. I'm not sure cons need that anymore. Maybe this is different for you, and I'd love to hear you guys talk about it. What are you getting from the fursuit parade? Either watching it or being in it, that you can't just get mingling in your suit at the con. Something to think about, because I do think for the larger cons, they will desperately try to figure a way to get rid of the fursuit parade in the long term, or at the very least, de-emphasize it to the point where the fursuit parade is sort of just an event or just a fursuit showcase event, not a full-on how many hundreds of people can we get together. There's a point when events are not able to grow themselves given the size of the convention. And I said it before in my Infernal Equinox review, eventually you can't fit 80% of the con in a single room or in a single event. Maybe this is that moment for the fursuit parade. I don't think of this as a bad news of, oh, woe is me, the con is big and we can't have the parade. I think of it more like, congratulations, this is a major and normal and expected part of the fandom, and we don't need a parade for you. The parade can be for the people who want to go out, who want to be out in the town in the suit, like do it like a fur walk, but it doesn't have to be a whole parade type event for the convention. And that continued on with cosplay, where cosplay stopped being a thing that one tiny little percentage of the con did, and was so normal that the rest of the con's like, well, you know, for the people who want to go that extra mile and show off on stage or showcase their costumes on stage, it's great, but it's not the thing to stop the entire con for. Anyway, just some food for thought and getting a little philosophical at the end about what exactly this is for. And I want to know, like, what do you think this is for? No questioning on the cap, that was necessary. The extra complexity of these rules about fursuits and gatekeeping that way, I think was kind of unnecessary in my opinion, and there's lots of simpler ways they could have done it. They could have done first come, first serve. They could have done lottery. They could have done a combination, or given priority to full suits with all the allowances for young fans and for people with mobility restrictions and the rest. This feels like it's overcomplicating it for no reason. But ultimately, I think the fursuit walk or the fursuit parade as a convention event to be spectated and kind of occupy the whole convention for a little while is kind of becoming a thing of the past. But that's just my 2 cents. What do you think about this? I'm curious what you think about the rules, how they could have made them better, what the fursuit parade means to you, and what you think the future is going to be. I will also remind you to like, comment, and subscribe, because if I don't, the evil overlords at YouTube will track me down. Anyway, let me know what you think. I'm not going to Anthrocon, but if you're going, I hope you have a wonderful time. Stay hydrated, stay safe, have fun. Cheshi out.